My role here on the panel is to present the academic perspective. And what I'm trying to accomplish here in the next 15 minutes is to provide you with some of the context in which academic research is taking place. And then also some of the challenges and the benefits and opportunities of working for academics, of working with the community sector, and then also from the community side to working with us academics. I do have an outline. I want to first talk a little bit about the Ryerson Center for Immigration and Settlement. That's a research center that I'm directing to set the stage. And then use an example of a research project that we're engaging in at the moment with community partners and talk a little bit about the objectives, the approaches, the partnership between academics and community, the governance structure, and the kind of activities that we're engaging in. And then wrap it up with discussing some of the lessons that we've learned from this research and from the process, really, of engaging in this research. And during this presentation, I want to focus on how we can set up a kind of partnership and what kind of approaches we can use to make them work for academics and for the community, what the challenges are, and then also discuss what some of the benefits are, including to you who are working on the front lines. So let me begin with a bit of a background here on RCIS. We were founded about 3.5 years ago. And our researchers, they noticed that we have an incredible amount of expertise, research expertise at Ryerson University. But there was not really a central institution to bundle all this research expertise. So our job, or our idea was to create a research center that would bundle this expertise and facilitate cutting-edge research and drive a research agenda that our faculty members could engage in. And another aim of this research center has been to develop partnerships, and that includes partnerships among academics, so within Ryerson, but also academic institutions that are located elsewhere, but then also between academics in the community sector, and do that first locally, and then upscale nationally, and eventually have international kind of partnerships. So we're working on all these fronts simultaneously. Let me explain the academic perspective using a community academic partnership, a project that we're conducting at the moment. The title is Integration Trajectories of Immigrant Families. And the funding source is SSHRC, standing for the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, and I think that already makes a difference who the funder is, because there are certain conditions and structural circumstances in the way that the money has to flow that already shapes a community academic partnership to begin with. And the funding program is a partnership development grant, meaning that the particular purpose of the funding program is to develop a partnership to begin with. Our objectives of this program is to develop interdisciplinary and disciplinary research partnerships, to engage in cross-sector co-creation of knowledge and understanding, to build networks for research and or related activities, and partnered knowledge mobilization. And we thought, when we looked at the grant description, well, this fits great to our research center, our newly established research center, and the kind of things that we are trying to accomplish. And we started within our faculty and the researchers, academic researchers, with a brainstorming session. What kind of research can we do to make this kind of partnership development program work for us? We all had interests in immigration and settlement research. And our question that we were asking was, how can we bring all these different kinds of research and research expertise into one kind of project? We have people that are dealing with labor. We have people dealing with gender issues in an immigration context. We have researchers that are dealing with youth, with community services, with immigration policy. So we were thinking, if we're centering our research project around the concept of the family, all the researchers can somehow participate, because within the family there's a breadwinner, so labor and work is important. Within the family there are gender roles, there are children involved. There are community services that are important for in a family context. And of course, there's this policy, immigration settlement policy, that affects families as well. So it was a mechanism to get a lot of interests involved, research interests involved in the subject matter. And then we designed a research project with the following objectives. And I'm not going to read through all this, I'm just going to give you a quick summary. So, investigating how all members of the family, not just the individual, but the family as a unit, facilitate or impede the integration process. What is the contribution that family as a whole and family members make to the Canadian economy? What are the social, political, economic costs and benefits? And also in understanding the impact of split families, meaning that there are family members that are actually not locating within the same country, and they might be locating in different countries, 2 countries, or even more countries. So with these kind of research questions, we were addressing a lot of interesting academic questions, but I also realized, and I think that's quite important that for the project, is that these kind of issues are also reflecting what you're probably dealing with on an everyday basis. In terms of approach, we have a dual kind of approach. First, we're looking at integration trajectories. So there's a presumed kind of mechanism or a step-by-step process from initial reception towards adaptation, and then a hypothetical example where an immigrant would be completely integrated. And then a second approach that intersects with that is, of course, as the name says, intersectionality. And within that context, we're dealing with all these kind of themes. So here, what I just mentioned before, these same categories are coming up again. Policy context, youth and children, violence against women, labor and work, the community sector. And again, these are important academic questions, but I think from a frontline perspective, you're probably also realizing these are the kind of issues that are intersecting in the kind of work that we're doing every day. Our academic community partnership consists of a range of academic researchers that are participating in this. We have 16 RCIS affiliated faculty that are working in this project, and they come from all kinds of disciplines, including business, geography, midwifery, psychology, politics, sociology, and a range of other disciplines. And then we have our initial community partners. These are well-known organizations. If you look through the list, that are also represented here in the room. And eventually, as our partnership development project progresses, we want to add partners, but at this point we want to also consolidate our partnership first before we we add additional partners. But that will be the next step. Very important, I think, in terms of making a community academic partnership work, is to have a governance structure that reflects an equal partnership between both parties. From my perspective as an academic, there are inherent power inequalities embedded in many of these partnerships. For SSHRC funding, academics are controlling the funds. So SSHRC sends the money to the university, and the director of the center, or the PI, the principal investigator, is in charge of the budget. Also, academics have expertise in research design and method. And they have the time to devote. It's actually their role to do research, and they have the time to devote research to research. So in these kind of partnerships, you have to be careful that academics are not hijacking the agenda, because sometimes they do have the possibility to do so. And I think, again, the governance structure that is carefully designed can prevent some of that. And you continuously, during such a partnership, have to make sure that this power imbalance that is structurally embedded in these partnerships is being checked and controlled. And also you have to realize, I think that's very important for a partnership, is that there are very different interests among academics and the community. Academics are operating under the motto publish or perish. That means that an academic is supposed to produce peer-reviewed, we heard that in the introduction, peer-reviewed publications. And our success is measured through how many papers in peer-reviewed journals we are publishing. So a doctoral student will get a job based on the number of peer-reviewed publications. Once that person finds a tenure-track job, he or she will get tenure based on the number of peer-reviewed publications, and then once the person has tenure, he or she will be promoted based on the number of publications. These kind of publications tend to be not very accessible or interesting to frontline workers or the community sector. First, they're published in journals that nobody else reads but other professors or maybe students that have to because professors make them. And they're very expensive, so a lot of community organizations don't have access to these journals. And then a lot of academics have interest in theoretical questions, and some of these questions are just not applicable to the front lines at all. And the community sector needs to, and that's my interpretation, you can tell me what the community center's motivations are, but you need to deliver services. And you have an interest in the practical questions and the practical application of research. And I think it's important in this kind of relationship that both parties understand the other one's motivations, and that also the partnership is constructed in a way that both needs are being met, because then otherwise the other party will lose interest. And I think that the project that we're engaging in at the moment reflects both of these interests. So let me just run through some of the activities in a very abbreviated format. Our project has 3 phases. In the first phase, we are establishing an infrastructure and we have conducted literature reviews. In the second phase, we're building the partnership through an empirical project. So we collectively designed research questions that we wanted to answer and designed a method to answer these questions. And then the third phase would be knowledge mobilization, where we expand the partnership and really try to apply it and make the knowledge that we've gained through our research project accessible to the stakeholders. And that includes, again, academics, other academics, and the community. So in the first phase, we began with establishing a website, and we conducted literature reviews, and these literature reviews were published in open access working papers. Working papers is not a peer-reviewed publication, so it doesn't really serve the academic side. But this is open access. This is available in an open access format, so you can just go to the internet, download the paper, read it. It's hopefully written in an accessible language. So this is something that the community sector actually has access to. And then academics can take the information that's in there, rephrase some of the questions, and still publish their peer-reviewed journal articles that nobody else reads. In phase 2, which we're now just starting, we are conducting a research project involving personal interviews on the role of families in the integration process. And we try to collaborate as much as possible. Brenda is part of this project as well, so maybe you can tell me later whether this is actually working in the way that I'm projecting it here. We were collaborating together to design the research questions that we were going to ask. So it's not just the academics that were asking these questions, but we wanted to have questions that are relevant to the community sector, answer these questions, and we needed the community sector to come up with these questions to begin with. And let me just wrap up here with a little summary of the needs of both of these sectors. And I'm probably more speaking for the academic sector because this is what I'm most familiar with. Academics need the community sector to achieve and accomplish several things. If we wanted to conduct socially relevant research, we have to ask people on the front lines what is important. So in order to conduct any kind of research that has a social impact, we need the sector, we need you to tell us what the interesting questions are. We need the community sector for knowledge mobilization and dissemination, that we reach the audience of policymakers, that we reach an audience of frontline workers that make our research worthwhile. sometimes we need access to the field. So if we want to have access to interviewees, we get in touch with community organizations and ask them to get in touch with our interviewees if they're immigrants, if they're immigrant families, or to conduct key expert interviews with some of you. And for funding, some funders require community participation. So again, we require participation from your side in our research projects. And the community, this is my impression, you can tell me otherwise, but I think that you can also mobilize some of the academic expertise that we have, the kind of research capacity that we have at the university. You can gain access to data, to analysis and interpretation, and one of the examples here would be the RCIS working papers that I just showed. We can provide access to resources, to graduate students, to library resources, and maybe even in the funding, depending on how the funding structure is being laid out of the funding granting institution, there might be ways of sharing some of the funding. And I'll leave it at that, and I'll look forward to the other panelists, how they pick up on some of these ideas, and to the discussion afterwards. Thank you.